love this. I've heard this concept. Go.
Right. But I'm going to explain this practically so that there's no debate. So let's say you're trying to get a job. Okay, you're trying to get this really competitive job, and you decide to team up with 4 other people. Here's what happens. 5 minds are greater than a single mind. So if there's 5 other people that are all going up against each other versus 5 people who stick together, they're all going to share resources. So let's say me and you and Rob, we're on the same team. Like, we both need to get a sales job. We're both role-playing sales. We're working together. I'm like, Rob, you stink at this. Like, you need to smile more. You need to, like, we're really harsh with the feedback. But you get the job, and I don't. So what happens in the situation is a lot of people go, well, that was a waste of time helping Rob, and I didn't get a job. This sucks. But here's what people miss. Who do you think Rob is going to recommend when he starts working? Is he going to recommend some random schmuck? No, he's going to recommend me, because I was the person who stayed the long nights with him. I was the person who made him the candidate he became to get the job. And that's why I got so many referrals when I applied for a job, because I helped so many people that all those people who ended up at crazy companies, Deloitte, Accenture, IBM, PwC, who was the number 1 person that they need to recommend? Brenden, you got to come to PwC. You got to come to IBM. You got to come. So I had like 15 interviews, and I got like 3 job offers, and I kind of just, I guess I'll work here and work there. That's the key to abundance. If you become the perfect candidate and you team up with a bunch of people, the key, especially in the context of communication, is now you actually get the real feedback that you need to get. Whereas where Rob can say, hey, Brenden, you're not smiling enough, dude. If you're talking about something you're excited about, you're passionate about, you look like this. Well, no one else is going to tell you besides your accountability partner. That's what happened with me. I'm very grateful for the 5 people who helped me get my job. And I bought them all steak after I got the job, too. So that's the key. Find some good people.
Excellent. Okay, so that's had a couple actionables in there. I just want to kind of re-bullet those, if you will. Find some buddies. Find some partners to help you kind of train through that. And if they get the position that you're helping them with, they're going to be a great reference for you. Okay, so that is really wonderful. That's totally new content. Thank you for seriously bringing an A game here, Brenden. That's outstanding. So again, listeners, that is wow. Probably one of the hardest hitting minutes we've had on this show. So we'll definitely box that out and make sure we play it to everybody. Anyway, so when you're doing your interview and things like that, I come from marketing, I come from sales. I've always seen the maxim of you need to write your ad copy for somebody who has a 3rd or 4th grade reading level. Does that kind of apply to speaking as well?
So the way that I see this, Rob, I guess in the context of interviews, this is probably going to be the most effective way of thinking about it. But feel free to follow up with another question.
Sure, yeah.
Is this idea that most people don't prepare the copy at all. So let's say they go into an interview. Every disclaimer alert, 99% of the interviews, they're going to say to you, tell me about yourself. You would be shocked. Like the number of candidates I've interviewed at IBM, which is a very competitive job to get.
Yeah, definitely.
None of them, I interviewed 10 candidates. None of them even prepare it. So they walk into a room, they go, yeah, I'm just going to use a random name here. Hi, my name's Chelsea, and my name's Josh, and, I worked at this thing, I do this, and I'm just there sitting there dude, or madam, you do realize, and obviously you don't see it in my face because I'm a great communicator, but
right,
it's
stone-faced.
Right. Whereas when somebody like me walked into the IBM interview, my tell me about yourself literally sounded like this. Hi, my name is Brenden. If there's one thing that you take away from my tell me about yourself, it's that I believe in helping other people achieve rocket level success. And there's 3 experiences in my life that helped me achieve that outcome. One was the case competitions, the 25 competitions I competed in, training delegates from across the world, speaking in countries like Serbia, Thailand, and the like. Number 2 is the amazing experience of philanthropy that I had the chance of accumulating in my university experience, whether it's through Charity Water or the book launch that I helped be a part of. And number 3 is the experiences I've had at PricewaterhouseCoopers, helping CFOs and financial directors navigate the complexities of the financial world. And having that or being that example for them to follow. So through all of these experiences serving my clients, et cetera, I was able to achieve that rocket level success. And that's why I'm excited to be positioning for this role. So notice how the structure and the way that you enter the room, you just, like they're just sitting there like, wow. Okay, like this person's different. And by the way, one thing I want to push for, I just kind of did that on the spot.
No, it was perfect. Go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm not saying for people like to do it, make it all official and stuff, but you need to practice. You're telling me about yourself. Like I've probably practiced that one 150 times, not like 10 times, people. The 10th time, my friend is laughing at me on the other side. He's like, "You sound like a thing, so like do it again." And then reword this part. And like he would literally come next to the computer and say, "Hey, you should reword this part of the question. You should reword this part of the answer." So that when it was time for my interview and I did it, they kind of just went like, "Whoa, like this guy is like different." Like it's like you already got the job before you even started the interview. So something I want to push.
And that I think is something we've touched on in this show as well, is the importance of the elevator pitch, that 30 to 60 second advertisement almost for yourself to say, this is who I am, this is what I can do for you, and this is why you should hire me. So again, another great snippet there for everybody. And we've talked about that, but at the same time, seeing it done in a way that is, I mean, you said you ad-libbed that, but that was fluid as all get out, Brenden, which is just great. And hearing a great example of that, I think will really help a lot of folks. So listeners, if you are looking for a really tight example of how to impress somebody when it comes to, launching into an interview, when they ask you, what's the Robb Conlon story? What's the Brenden Kumarasamy story? That right there, I think, take that, dissect it, break it down and make it yours. Okay. That was fantastic. So Brenden, we're walking in, we take in that one recruiter, that's fine. But sometimes they bring a team. Sometimes they bring a squad. And I've heard different things about why companies do this. I think sometimes they try to wrong foot people and kind of gang up on them. It's a power dynamic. And I don't always necessarily agree with that. This is probably the closest time at which job hunting kind of comes to public speaking, because you're actually talking to a group. So for someone who finds himself in a panel interview, what are some strategies that our listeners can actually use to help even that playing field, or maybe even kind of shift the things to their advantage?
Yeah, and I'm happy to share something counterintuitive. Practice the panel before the panel. What does that mean? Always do the harder thing. So if there's a panel of 5 people, I would arrange a virtual panel before the actual interview with 10 people that you don't like, that hate you, that are going to crush you. And that's what I did, right? I made my interviews.
You have 10 people that don't like you?
Oh, yeah. Well, let me rephrase. I kind of say that for effect. What I mean is, like, very good friends of mine who aren't afraid to tell me the truth. That's what I mean. But the point that I'm driving is they've ran me through so many walls in 8 months that by the time it was time to interview me, I didn't care if there's 50 people on the panel. Like, it didn't matter. Like, I was going to get the job because I'd practiced so much more.
Right.
So the advice for people, whatever the format is for your interview, whether it's a 1-on-1, whether it's a 2-on-1, whether it's a 10-on-1, I think of it like a sports game, like war or something, especially since we're in tough times.
Sure.
Make it harder. Like if you're training to run a 40-mile race, run 60. So when you run 40, it's a joke. Or if you're trying to present something you do understand, practice something you don't understand at all. Practice talking about hippos and nail polish. We can get into those exercises later. But the idea that I'm pushing is if you do the harder thing, the presentation becomes easy. So I'll give you one specific example. So for my IBM job, the job I currently hold today, the interview process was very difficult in the sense that there was like 150 people on the short list, and then they shortlisted another 30 for the final round.
Wow.
Right? And in that final round, I think maybe 7 or 9 people get a job out of the 30. So it's a pretty good rate, 33% chance, not bad.
Okay, yeah.
But obviously, Brenden doesn't take chances. He's going to make sure he gets that job. So what happened when I was in that room is they made us do a group case. So how that works, this is very unique to the job I applied to, which is still good learning for everyone's listening because your interview would be easier than what I did. They put us all into teams of 5, 6 teams, 6 people, 5 teams.
Sure.
And they made us all do a case, so a business problem. We all had an hour. And you had a bunch of like very senior executives who would watch all of us and see how they interacted or how we interacted in teams, and they would take notes, right? And what happens is every single person gets 1 minute to present. And every single person goes, and our time runs out before they get to me. So the senior executive looks at me and says, you can say one sentence. So this is clearly the most stressful interview you could ever get. Okay, like everyone got a minute except for me because the presentation was 5 minutes or 6 people, and it wasn't their fault. Okay, a lot of people actually knew in the interview because they were buddies of mine. They're from the program, so they're from the university. So it's not like it wasn't. They just got stressed, right? So their time ran out. So, but most candidates would have done like, company should do this. No. Like, this is a guy who did 100 case interviews. I'm not going to just say one sentence. This is my only opportunity to get the job. So I literally go, in a very kind way, thank you very much. And then I go ahead and I just present for a minute. And I blow it. Like, no, I mean, I don't blow it. I kill it.
Okay.
Right? Like, I blow it out of the water. I mean,
sure.
And all of the executives looked at me and just went, I want him on my team. They fought over me. I got 4 job offers. Like, it was nuts.
Wow. Okay, so to stop you for 1 second there, Brenden, you didn't have a minute you were not given a minute.
I took a minute.
You took the minute. Okay. How did they take that? And maybe that's what you're getting into next.
Yeah, exactly. They loved it because of but obviously one thing I want to point out is I didn't demand the minute. I took it gracefully. The point I want to draw here, okay, is if you always do the harder exercise, when it's game time, you'll be prepped mentally. And you'll be so well prepared that you'll make the right decision. Remember, we always default to our practice. Our instinct always defaults to our practice. So if we haven't prepared, if we haven't done the work, we always default to that because the stress, we can't control what's going to happen. Like, I didn't expect that to happen, but I took advantage of it and I became the number 1 hire that year because of that, or the number 1, I guess, in demand. The way that this applies to you is saying, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen in this interview, so I'm going to make my friends give me the hardest possible interview I can and judge me on everything. One thing I used to do in cases, that's a tip, I even made fun of people who smiled in the wrong way. So let's say like my teammate Catherine and I, we'd like practice in a hotel before we'd present the next day. Sure. She would literally look at me and say, am I smiling the right way? And I would go, no. I'd literally take her hand, move her to a mirror and just go, this is how you do it. Like this.
Like literally like, adjusting your face.
No, but I would do it like in front of the mirror. I'd just be like, not like this. Like this. Like I'd be like, this is what you need. I fixed all of those little things. She was a monster. She destroyed all the other teams. Like, good. Same thing with you. Let me, like, at this point, if you're in this conversation, right, that you're listening to, how many candidates, like, really think about this. Sure, jobs are more scarce now. Things are more harder. How many candidates are going to implement everything I just said? Most of them don't even implement one of those things.
Right.
Not even one. I've said like 5 things right now. If you do all those 5 things, you're already in the top 1% of applicants. Right. So if you apply to 10 jobs that you're really qualified for, I would be shocked if you couldn't get one of those 10.
Good to hear. Okay. So we're still in front of that panel of 3 to 4 people. If one of them asks me a question, say they're sitting in a row, the person on the right asks me a question, how do I reply to that question from like an attention standpoint? Obviously, Jane, who's sitting on the left there, asked me the question, but Roger, who's over here on all the way on the left, what's the goal for me when I'm answering that question in paying attention to everybody?
Good follow. So the point that I think about this, or the way that I think about this, is you want to buy time. So one thing I would say something like, thank you for the question, Jane. That just gave me 2 seconds to think. And then what's going to happen in that 2 seconds, I'm going to start talking, try and build a solution. And what you want to do is, even if you're answering the question to Jane, you still want to look at everyone else in the panel. But here's the practical way of dealing with this, because I know a lot of us struggle with questions.
Sure.
Do question drills. So what's a question drill? That same panel I talked about virtually, they're not just commenting on your presentations. They're asking you questions. Every little hole and everything that you say, they try and find. Their job is to make sure you get the job, essentially. So what happens is they ask you so many questions, every little nitty-gritty thing about what you do, that you're ready for anything. And I'll give you a personal example. When I applied for IBM, my friends told me one of the questions that might come up is, why do you not want to get a full-time job at PwC? Like, why do you want to apply for IBM? Right? And I knew that was coming. So my friends grilled me. They said, well, I mean, PwC has this many benefits. Why are you leaving this great team? Are you some guy who just defects? to a job, like you're not loyal to a company, like they would hit me like really hard. Guess what question I got in the final round?
Ooh, really?
Senior executive at IBM, he looked at me and he said, Brenden,